Greetings, Edward the MetaTutor here to bring you a video covering data types and variables in Python. You may be familiar with some of the basics of programming and looking to get started in Python, in which case I want you to be comfortable with how types work in Python, since it's a little bit different from other higher level programming languages. Or you may be totally new to programming and looking for a place to get started with Python. Either way, this video might help you get introduced to at least 3 of the basic data types, which are integer, string, and Boolean. So Booleans have 2 possible values, and that is either true. Notice how my color coding automatically recognizes it, and false. And so these are named for George Boole, who was a, I believe, English mathematician, and I guess contributed to logic in some capacity. After Boolean, the next data type I want to talk about is string. So I'll start writing these out. Boolean and string. String is much like any other language. It's just the word that we use to refer to text. And you can put strings inside of double quotes like this or single quotes like that in Python. There are different reasons for doing so. If you're using an apostrophe like the word don't, one of the easiest ways to not have that give you an error is to use double quotes instead of single quotes. But those are 2 ways of creating a string literal is what that's called. A string literal where it's not a variable name that refers to hello, but hello itself in quotes. And the final data type is integer, which is just any number, 5, 6, 7, any integer specifically. And one of the things that I think is worth pointing out that makes Python different from other languages, for those of you who have learned other languages before, is that there's no specific integer division. So for instance, if I pop on over to the shell and I say 5 divided by 2, Python will give me 2.5. It doesn't say, oh no, there's some sort of issue with integers and float values and decimals. It just does it and it prints it out. And we can actually go ahead and we can say, let's create a variable, which is the first thing I want to show you all how to do. So to create a variable, you just have to type its name. So it can be anything like the letter A equals 5. That one's named A. We can make one named my example and set it equal to, I guess we're setting it equal to I'll keep it with that. That's the basic structure for creating a variable. Essentially just a name that is unique. It's not one of the names that's already used by the Python language, like for instance, or if. If is a horrible variable name. I don't think it will work. And then the equal sign, and it's just one equal sign because you're assigning a value, not comparing. And then whatever it is that you want to set the value equal to. So one last thing that I think is worth pointing out is that for Boolean values, you have to use a capital T and a capital F for true and false. So again, any name works for a variable. You could just test variable equals true. Or second Boolean variable equals false. And the capitalization that I use here, where the first letter is lowercase, but all subsequent first letters of new words are uppercase, is called camel case. And the idea here is that if we can't put spaces between variable names, which we can't, then you have to still know when a word starts, and using uppercase helps. The uppercase for true and false is a choice that Python made. Not every language does that, but you have to use a capital T, capital F, or else it doesn't recognize it. So we now have several variables, but what can we do with these? Well, if you want to immediately get started using them, I will also be making a video on if and else statements, and that's the most basic thing to move on from here. But there's some other things that you can do with this. For instance, a very important one, and so if we look up here, I have said that the functions covered in this video include print. Let's go ahead and let's print some variables. So I'm going to go over to the Python shell for this one. I'm going to delete everything that I have so far. And we're going to create a variable titled hello world and set it equal to hello world. And I'm going to print hello world, the variable. So when I print the variable name, it prints out the value hello world. But if I print in quotes hello world, then it prints exactly what I typed. And so, this is, I'm trying to, I want to show how print works. If you don't pass any arguments through, if you put something inside the parentheses, it's called an argument or a parameter. If you don't pass anything through, it just gives you a blank line. So print allows you to display text or data on the shell, on the Python compiler. The shell is a good word for that. But if we put in quotes, then it's going to expect a string. It's going to give us a string. So if I type in hello, it's going to print exactly what I typed in, which is hello. But if I type in a variable name, so like I did up above, then it prints what that variable name represents. Hello world represents hello world. So I printed out that formatted version. If I create a variable called a and set it equal to 10, and I print a, lo and behold, 10. Let's do print a plus 3. It evaluates the expression first, the mathematical expression, a plus 3, gets 13, and then prints 13. So those are the basics of the print function and how you can use variables there. I also want to talk about the input function next. Input accepts user input. So right now, it's waiting for me to type something, I enter it, and it spits it back to me. Cool, but let's say I wanted to do something with that. Well, let's combine our first skill, which is creating variables, and this function, and let's store whatever the user inputs. So let's use the variable a again, say a equals, and then type in input. Hello is my input, and now if I print a, it'll print hello. So input basically opens up a new line and says, what do you want this, what do you want to input? I input something, and it takes that in, and then either it sets that equal to new variable. You can do whatever you want with that. So I decided to put it into a variable and then print that variable. But you actually could have done that from the beginning. You could have sort of like Lego block said, all right, I want to print whatever you input, like that, and I printed it back. So I'm going to cover the remaining functions that I typed up here in a second part of this video, but I just want to provide a quick review of the basic ideas here, which is that we have different data types. We have booleans, strings, and integers, and there are others, but those are the ones that we're going to work with primarily. You can create variables, set them equal to these data types, change the data type or change the data of the variable, and you can also, beyond that, accept user input, manipulate the user input, and print user input. You can also, you can do whatever you want with that. So user input, it accepts whatever the user inputs and provides it to you. So you can either print it from there, or you can store it in a variable. And once it's stored in a variable, honestly, it's there are there's a massive amount of options available to you. It's too many to describe, in even like a million videos. That's the basic building blocks of most programs. And so I'm going to start getting a little bit more in depth into accepting user input in the second part of the video, which is where we will where we will cover these functions. So thank you, and stay tuned.